And now for the last of our 3 tutorials that I'm doing for Magik from Marvel Rivals. And this one is how I made the breastplate out of foam. Yee! And this is a really fun project to figure out and to pattern as well as to paint. And I can't wait to share with you in this tutorial how I do it. But first you have to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as well as don't forget to check out the other 2 videos that I did on Magik. So yeah, let's begin. And here are all of the tools and materials that you will need for making this breastplate, and I'll have links to everything in the description, as well as you can find my pattern that we're going to be following along on my website, tiffanyGordonCosplay.com. Starting off with tracing all of the pattern pieces onto your HD foam. And I've indicated in the pattern what size thickness of foam you will need for each of the parts. So 2mm foam you will need to put on A, B, F, L, and T. For your 4mm foam parts, this is going to be C through E, J, K, M through P, R, S, and U through X. And then for 6mm foam, this will be parts I and Q. Next, grab that heat gun and we're going to heat treat our foam before cutting it out using an X-Acto knife. And then we're going to focus on the middle chest area. So grab parts A and B, and we're going to add some contact cement glue to the 2 middle seam parts, wait for the glue to dry, and then attach them. And then for C, D, and E, I ended up going to my sanding bench and rounding all of the edges, and then started to attach them to the AB part. Starting with C first, and then I would attach D on top of that, followed by E. A little helpful tip is to always trace where each piece is going to lay, so that way you know where to apply your contact cement glue for attaching them. Now put it to the side and we're going to move on to the cup parts, starting with attaching J to K and S to R. And then for parts I and Q, I first rounded the edges with a sanding drum and then applied my contact cement glue to the underside of each of these pieces, as well as to the indicated part on the pattern, to the top part of SR and JK, let the glue fully dry, and then slowly start to attach, starting from one side and working my way to the other. Side note, this piece is going to really make your cups start to form and round into the correct shape. Then put those now 2 finished cup pieces to the side, and we're gonna do the center valley part, and this is gonna be letters F, G, H. And for G and H, I did again round the edges first, and then applied contact cement glue to the back side of those, as well as to the top side of F. Let the glue dry and attach them on top. And now that all 3 of those main components are done, we can start to assemble those. And I highly recommend, for a better fitting, to go back and we're gonna actually slightly carve the bottom part of each of these connecting pieces at a 45. You can also sand it at a 45, whichever floats your boat. And then that is where we're going to be applying our contact cement glue to join all the pieces together. Starting with our lower V part, the FGH part, and connecting that to the upper chest part, and then connecting the cups. And for the cups, I recommend attaching them to GH first, and then working our way to the outer parts of the upper chest plate. And a little helpful tip is, on the pattern, there's also little marks on the edge of the pattern to indicate where these parts should end, just as a little guide. And once done, it should look like a creepy bug head. And then for basically the rest of the parts of this pattern. And for parts M through P and U through K, I highly recommend sanding the top part of the edges first so they're nice and round, and then apply contact cement glue to all of the back sides of our pieces and to the top part of L and T, wait for the glue to dry, and then slowly start to attach them. And I recommend looking at my example in the pattern on which pieces attach where and tracing those onto L and T so that way you have a really good indication of where they align. And just like before, for a nicer fit, I did go to the edges and carve out at a 45 just to remove that extra foam. You can do this with a sanding drum or just attach without doing it, but it is going to make them not fit as nicely. And then applied my contact cement glue, waited for the glue to dry again, and attached these two parts to their location on the cups. And the very last step is you will note that there are two hole parts on the breast area where the cups are, and these I just cut out a little square piece of 2mm foam and glued them to close off that piece. And that's pretty much how I fabricated the breastplate out of foam. Now to start painting. And here is everything that I used for painting this breastplate. And a reminder, if you don't have access to an airbrush and a compressor, it is okay. You can always paint this by hand instead with a paintbrush. And I'll note that it was really difficult in my spray booth to prime and paint this breastplate, so I ended up just putting it on my dedicated painting mannequin. So yeah, it's gonna look a little funky, but it did its purpose and it worked well. But anyway, the first step is to prime your foam, and for this we're gonna be using 3 coats of Plasti-Dip, which is a rubber spray paint, and this is going to really hold all of the foam together, and it's going to make your surface for painting a lot smoother. And the first coat of paint that I'm going to be using is Autoborn Sealer Black. Now, you can skip this step if you want, but for me, because I was trying to have all of my paint scheme cohesive, this paint is actually more of a primer for 3D printed parts or for more plastic surfaces, not necessarily for foam. It does still work on foam, but because some of my other parts on this cosplay, I was using that for that, I wanted it to still look the same, so I did apply it onto the foam. But again, you don't have to do this step, you can always skip it. And the first coat of actual paint color that we're going to be doing is going to be a mixture of Createx Colors Opaque Black, Gray, and White. And I applied this coat very heavy with my airbrush, and while the paint was still wet, I wanted this paint job to feel like these were kind of metal parts, and I want them to have kind of some battle damage. So because our paint color underneath was black, I ended up getting one of the back ends of my tweezers and scraping away really fast in certain spots on the breastplate, and that is actually removing the more gray color on top and will expose the black color underneath, giving you this kind of battle-like damage. And I think it looks really cool on the cosplay, especially when you're up close. And I focused this more on the cup sections and for the upper chest section for this color. Then I waited for it to dry and masked it off, and then the next color I did was the same mixture, but I put a heavy amount of black in it, so you really couldn't even tell. It might as well have just been painted black. Then I waited for that to dry, and I masked off pretty much most of the breastplate and only left open where the parts were going to be that I wanted to glow. And this is mostly on the upper chest piece. There are also 2 spots on the very back that I wanted to glow, and then 2 parts on the cups. And the color that I'm going to be using for this one is Opaque White. And we're doing white because we want all of the colors on top of this to pop. And then to start giving the glowy effect, and we're going to be doing Pyro Orange, followed by Hansa Yellow. And for the Hansa Yellow, I'm going to be focusing it more into the very center of each of these parts, and I'm going to be pulling the airbrush away from the surface, and this is going to mist out more and give it more of a glowy-like effect rather than one solid even coat, because you do want that orange to shine around the edges. Then once as that's dry, we can finally remove all of our masking tape and, for my case, paper towels that we're covering and masking off our sections. And the last step for painting this is going to be sealing all of our paint, and I use Createx Colors UVLS Satin, and this is going to give a nice, even, consistent look onto the entire surface of this piece, as well as it's going to protect your paint job from the sun and it will not fade. And I'll note that for having this breastplate stay in place, I actually did something a little bit different than what I do for a lot of my breastplates. And that is, well, one, it attaches with Velcro at this very top to the collar. And that helps it from shifting left and right, moving up and down, whatever. As well as on the back, I typically for my breastplates will have it where I do a zipper that attaches to the foam part of the inside of the breastplate that I can unzip in and out of, or I will do where there's a flap that goes behind both of the connecting pieces, and I'll have a strip of Velcro to attach to the foam piece. I did not do that method for either of these. Instead, I actually have it where it is Velcroed onto the shirt. So there's a strip of Velcro on the inside of the foam and a strip right here that connects to the shirt. And this helps so that way it just doesn't shift, because her shirt is a little bit awkward and we don't want any slippage of anything. So this prevented that, as well as I left enough room so that way the zipper I can still pull on and off, and I do attach it before I put on the shirt, so it's just one piece and then I just zip it up to get into it, and that is how I did the breastplate. And that, guys, is how I made Magik's breastplate from Marvel Rivals, and I really hope that this helps you for your own cosplay, as well as just making a breastplate in general, or airbrush painting, all of the above. Anyway, let me know in the comments if it was, as well as what other cosplay I should make next. Maybe another one from Marvel Rivals or from another franchise, let me know. As well as a big thank you to all of my company sponsors and all of my members. Specifically those legendary members, so that way I can continue bringing you more cosplay tutorials as my full-time job. And I will see you for our next one. Much love, guys.